Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. It's so great to have you here with me today. I want to take you back to the day I first arrived in London. I remember stepping off the train, my heart pounding with nerves, dragging a suitcase that felt way too heavy for me. The city just stretched out before me like this massive, unread book, and honestly, I was terrified I wouldn't know how to read it. The air was damp and chilly, but it had this scent, a scent of possibility, like something new was just about to happen. Standing there in the station, watching everyone rush past with such purpose, I had this flash of doubt. Did I make a huge mistake? Was I too quiet, too slow for a city that moved this fast? But then a little spark of excitement ignited inside me. I was actually here in London, a city I'd only ever dreamed of visiting. Its history seemed to whisper from the old stone buildings, and the city lights glowed with a promise that things were about to change. I came here to study, but I had a feeling the lessons I was about to learn wouldn't just be from textbooks. Every sound, every face, every streetlight seemed to be calling me to step forward, to explore not just this incredible city, but myself too. Hopping into a taxi, we drove through these narrow, winding streets that felt like they were holding centuries of secrets. I just pressed my face against the window, watching the buildings go by. It was like London itself was looking at me, saying, "You're a stranger now, but you'll belong here soon." That idea was both so comforting and so incredibly scary. I'd crossed an ocean for this year, and with every street we passed, my old life felt further and further away, while a new one was rising like the sun on the horizon. And with that new beginning came this tiny, hopeful feeling, a longing for something I couldn't quite name. Maybe it was the hope that somewhere among the ancient parks and busy streets, I'd find more than just knowledge. Maybe I'd find companionship, that somewhere in this huge crowd, I'd meet someone's eyes and feel a little less alone in the world. I know it sounds a bit like a daydream, and I told myself not to be so fanciful. But still, as the city revealed itself, every corner seemed to whisper about stories that were just waiting to happen. Finally, I arrived at my new home for the year, a small flat with windows looking out onto a quiet street. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. It was my starting point. Standing there, with my suitcase half unpacked and my thoughts all over the place, I had this moment of clarity. London wasn't just going to be a place to study. It was going to be a stage. And even though I was still trembling a little behind the curtain, I knew I was about to step into the story of my life. It was one of those gray London afternoons, the kind where the sky can't quite decide between rain and light, that I found myself stepping into this small cafe tucked along a quiet street. The windows were all fogged up with warmth, and the smell of coffee mixed with fresh bread just hit me. I remember thinking how lovely it felt to escape the dampness outside, how the hum of conversation wrapped around me like a soft blanket. It wasn't an extraordinary place, just plain wooden tables and shelves lined with old books, but to me, it felt like the first corner of London where I might actually belong. I picked a table by the window, the kind that lets you watch the rain streaking down the glass and the strangers moving about their lives outside. I was perfectly happy to just sit there quietly with my tea, but fate, it seemed, had other plans. The seat across from me was empty, but only for a moment. A voice, gentle yet certain, asked if it might be taken. When I looked up, I met a pair of eyes that caught me completely off guard, steady and kind, with a spark that seemed to both question and welcome me all at once. I can to say if it was the rain that slowed down time, or the way their smile seemed to break right through the grayness of the day. But something definitely shifted inside me. We started with polite words, the kind you offer to a stranger, but once the conversation began, it just refused to rest. Their voice had this rhythm that just drew me in, and before I knew it, we were laughing as if we'd known each other for years, not just a few minutes. Suddenly, London, this huge, unfamiliar city, narrowed down to just the small circle of our table, where every word felt both delicate and deeply meaningful. There was something in the way they listened, not rushing, not distracted, but completely present, as if every thought I shared was the most important thing in the world. And me, who had arrived in this city with a heart trembling between fear and hope, I felt a sense of ease I never expected to find so soon. Maybe it was the simplest things, the way they stirred their tea, the way their hand brushed lightly against the table, or how their laughter rose above the murmur of the room, but I sensed that this moment, as ordinary as it appeared on the surface, was quietly extraordinary. It was one of those small, perfect moments that you know you'll remember forever. When we finally parted ways, the rain had stopped, though I barely noticed until I stepped back out onto the street. The air was fresh, the city seemed brighter, and even though I told myself it was just a chance meeting, a single encounter among millions, I knew it was something more. In those few hours, London no longer felt like a stranger's city. It felt like the beginning of something I couldn't yet name, but already carried close to my heart. Have you ever noticed how a place changes when you're no longer exploring it alone? For me, that city was London. What once felt immense, almost overwhelming, soft when I had someone to share it with. It was as if the very streets shifted their character just to welcome us. Our walks through Hyde Park were some of the most beautiful discoveries. Those wide paths, shaded by trees that stood like wise old guardians, seemed to stretch on forever. Every turn revealed a new delight, a hidden garden, a swan gliding across the Serpentine, or the sound of children laughing under the open sky. It was there, in the quiet of the park, that conversations just flowed. We spoke about everything and nothing, our words weaving into the rustle of leaves above. And when the laughter came, it was so free, echoing with a warmth that made the city feel less foreign, more like home. Even the rain, which I used to see as a nuisance, became this uninvited companion we learned to embrace. Umbrellas were never quite enough, and we'd often end up damp, our coats heavy with water, but I never once regretted those moments. There was a certain magic to walking side by side down glistening streets, with the reflections of lamplight shimmering at our feet. The world seemed to slow down. While buses and carriages hurried past, we lingered in our own rhythm, sharing secrets that might never have been spoken in the bright light of day. The rain, instead of dampening our spirits, seemed to draw us closer, wrapping the city in mist and giving us permission to exist in a quieter, more tender space. But it was by the Thames, late at night, that London revealed its truest self. The river carries the city's history in its steady flow, its waters reflecting both the brilliance of the bridges and the whispers of centuries gone by. We would stand together near the embankment, the cool air on our cheeks, our voices softening in the hush of the night. It was there that we shared our dreams, their dreams, my dreams, and sometimes dreams that started to belong to both of us. The sound of the water became our confidant, carrying our words away as if to protect them, leaving only the feeling of closeness between us. There were no grand declarations or big promises spoken on those midnight walks. And yet, every step, every glance, every pause before we parted felt more binding than any words could ever be. The city in all its vastness became so intimate. From Hyde Park's quiet corners to the rain-drenched pavements, from the glow of a street lamp to the endless song of the river, London wove us into its fabric. And so, the city that once felt too large, too fast, and too indifferent became a place of belonging. Not because of its famous monuments or its long history, but because every street and every shadow began to hold a memory that we had written there, together. Life in London wasn't exactly a walk in the park. My studies were way more demanding than I ever anticipated. I mean, we're talking endless hours buried in library books, a mountain of assignments that never seemed to shrink, and this constant pressure to prove myself in a world that felt a million miles away from home. There were days, honestly, when the weight of it all just felt crushing, and I'd catch myself wondering if I'd made a huge mistake, thinking I could just pack up and thrive so far from everything I knew. Even the city itself, with its unwritten rules and strange customs, made me feel like an outsider for the longest time. Simple things like ordering food without fumbling over my words, or just trying to keep up with the fast pace of a university lecture, each one felt like a small personal battle. But right in the middle of all that chaos, there was a bright spot. There was someone who saw past all my insecurities and brought a sense of balance to my days. We'd meet up after our classes, often at that same little cafe where it all began. With them, I could finally let my guard down, voicing all the doubts and frustrations I kept locked away from everyone else. Their patience was my anchor. They couldn't magically solve all my problems, of course, but just having them there gave me the strength to face whatever came next. But here's the thing about love. It doesn't just erase your problems. Sometimes it shines a spotlight right on them. We had our fair share of misunderstandings, little clashes that came from our different backgrounds and habits. What was completely normal for me would seem bizarre to them, and vice versa. It wasn't always a romantic movie montage. Sometimes our cultural differences felt sharp and frankly exhausting. We argued, like any couple does, over silly things, a missed call, a thoughtless word, a silence that stretched on for too long. But underneath all that friction, we both knew that what we had was worth fighting for. And oh, the good times. They were so good, they made everything else fade away. I remember walking through bustling markets, the air filled with music and laughter, cooking together in their tiny flat, and staying up way too late, forgetting all about exams and deadlines. Those were the moments that reminded me why I was there, why I stayed. Every challenge felt so much lighter when weighed against that kind of happiness. Suddenly, London, with all its coldness and chaos, felt a little warmer, a little gentler, seen through the lens of our companionship. It was never perfect, and it was certainly never easy. But maybe that's what made it so real. The cycle of studying, stumbling, arguing, and then finding our way back to laughter. It all wove together into something so much richer and more complex than I could have ever imagined when I first arrived. Love wasn't an escape from my life in London. It was the thread that connected the joy and the hardship, creating a story I'll carry with me forever. And through it all, through both the good and the bad, I didn't just start to understand the city. I started to understand myself. Stepping off that train in London a year ago, I was just a student with a suitcase full of books and even more uncertainties. I thought I was here just to study, to tick a box on my academic journey, but London had other plans for me. This city, with its endless streets and constant hum, didn't just teach me from textbooks. It taught me about myself. It started with the small things, like finally mastering the labyrinth of the tube without staring at the map like a lost tourist, or finding the courage to speak up in a classroom where my voice used to shake. Every day was a lesson. Some were wrapped in laughter with new friends, others hidden in challenges that made me question everything. But with each one, I felt myself changing. Friendship painted my days in the most vibrant colors. Our tiny kitchen became a world stage, filled with the aromas of dishes from countries I'd only dreamed of visiting. We'd talk for hours, sharing stories and books, weaving our different lives together. These people taught me that home isn't just a place. It's a feeling you build with kindred spirits. They turned my moments of loneliness into shared adventures, and then there was love. It was a quiet, steady force that gave me the courage to face the daunting moments of living so far from everything I knew. It held a mirror to my own flaws, my impatience, my doubts, and gently pushed me to become a better, more mature version of myself. It gave meaning to the grayest, rainiest London days. Adventure wasn't just about grand trips. It was in the spontaneous bus rides to unknown neighborhoods, The quiet late night walks along the Thames when the city lights shimmered on the water. Each small discovery, each weekend escape to the green countryside, felt like a scene from a story I was finally living, not just reading. Now, as I look back, I barely recognize that timid person who first arrived. That year wasn't just about studying abroad. It was about growing up. It was a collection of small choices, quiet risks, and unexpected joys that pieced together a new me, someone stronger, braver, and more open to the world. My year in London became a chapter of becoming, and it's a story I'll carry with me long after leaving this incredible city behind. My last few days in London came and went so quietly, but inside, my heart was a storm. This city, once a stranger, had become my most intimate friend. Every corner, every sound, every single street held a memory. A laugh here, a tear there, discoveries I never thought I'd make. As I started packing my things into the same suitcase I'd arrived with, so full of uncertainty, I had to stop. Was I really ready to leave this all behind? That question echoed in every empty room, at every last dinner with friends, on every final walk through the city that had completely reshaped me. Of course, home was calling. There's a certain comfort in going back to what you know, to the faces and places that have been waiting for you across an ocean. But leaving now felt different. It was tangled up with this new, undeniable bond. Love had changed everything. It had woven itself so deeply into my days that I couldn't imagine London without him, or myself without the life we had built together. So leaving didn't just mean leaving the city. It meant leaving the rhythm of a shared life that had grown so naturally, so unexpectedly, into something I couldn't live without. We talked about it all the time, sitting in that same little cafe where it all began. Our conversations were a mix of hope and fear. Could love survive this distance if I left? Could I take the lessons of this year with me if the person who was there for every step wasn't by my side anymore? His voice was always steady, but his eyes held the same uncertainty I felt. We'd dream out loud about what could be, weighing choices that had no easy answers, no right or wrong. It felt like London itself was part of these final days, as if the city knew I was standing at a crossroads. The parks, so lush and green with summer, seemed to whisper of new beginnings, not endings. The river, steady and constant, felt like a reminder that life just keeps flowing, no matter where it takes us. Even the rain, which I used to dread, fell so softly, like it was bidding me farewell. Or maybe, just maybe, urging me to stay. Every little detail of the city felt sharper, more vibrant, as if it was begging to be remembered. In the end, the choice wasn't just about leaving or staying. It was between the safety of the life I knew before and the beautiful uncertainty of what love was promising. Both paths had their own weight, and neither came with any guarantees. But as I stood there in the very place that had once felt so overwhelming, I realized something. The truest measure of this year wasn't what I had studied or seen, but who I had become. And a part of me was no longer tied to just one place. It was tied to a person who taught me that home can be found in a heart just as much as it can be found in a city. So the end of my year in London wasn't a goodbye at all. It was the quiet, hopeful start of a brand new beginning. Thank you so much for joining me on this little reflection. If you've ever had to make a choice like this, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.